They checked their watches when they came out. 3 hours, they thought, maybe 4. It had been 29. And one of them, standing in the dark at 4 in the morning, completely calm, said he thought they'd been inside for weeks. Nobody argued with him. That's where this story ends. Here's where it begins. 6 experienced cavers, 1 cave. A trip that should have been routine. What happened inside, what they remember, what they don't, and what one of them remembers that she shouldn't, is the kind of thing that doesn't have a clean explanation. Not a scientific one, not any other kind. This is the story of the cave that makes people forget time. And by the time it's over, you'll never trust your own memory the same way again. It started the way most bad stories do, with excitement. 6 people, experienced cavers, not amateurs. They had proper gear, helmets, headlamps, ropes, a first aid kit packed tighter than most people's emergency bags. They had done this before, dozens of times, which is exactly why none of them were nervous. The entrance to Bracken Cave is unremarkable. A mouth of rock just wide enough to squeeze through sideways if you angle your shoulders right. The kind of opening that looks like it leads nowhere interesting. That's the thing about underground places. They lie to you on the way in. The group's leader, I'll call him Marcus because he's never given permission to use his real name, wrote in his journal that morning, 3 hours max, easy passage, back for dinner. He did not make it back for dinner. The first hour underground felt normal. Cold air, the kind that sits heavy in your lungs. The smell of mineral and wet stone. The particular silence you only find deep in the earth. Not quiet, but absent. Like the world above simply stopped existing. Then the first watch stopped. Marcus assumed the battery. He'd had that watch for years and the battery was overdue. He didn't mention it to the others. There was no reason to. 2 minutes later, a woman named Dell, short for Delphine, shook her wrist and held her watch up to her headlamp. The face had fogged over from the inside. When she tapped the glass, the hands fell. Not stopped, fell. Loose in the casing, like something had severed the connection. By the time the third watch stopped, nobody was pretending it was coincidence. But here is where it gets strange. Not frightening yet, just wrong. Nobody was hungry. They had brought food, packed carefully. Energy bars, dried fruit, trail mix. The kind of calories you eat not because you're enjoying yourself, but because your body needs fuel to keep moving in the cold. Marcus reminded them to eat at what he estimated was the 2-hour mark. Nobody wanted anything. Not one of them. He pushed the food away himself. His stomach felt full, not satisfied, just switched off, like hunger had been unplugged at the source. They pressed deeper. The second chamber was where the memories started to go. Marcus later described it as losing the edits. He knew events were happening. He was moving, speaking, making decisions. But when he tried to string those events together into a sequence, there were gaps. Not blackouts, not sleep, just sections where the film strip had been cut and spliced back together, frames missing, the story still moving, but with something quietly removed from the middle. He would look at a wall and know he had been looking at it for some time. He just didn't know how long. He would turn around and find the group in a different formation than he remembered, as if they had rearranged themselves while he wasn't paying attention, as if he had blinked and the world had quietly shuffled. 4 members of the group experienced this. Fragmented time, incomplete memory, a feeling, and they all used this word independently, without comparing notes until months later. A feeling of being watched. Not by something in the cave, by themselves. as if a second version of each of them had split off and was observing the first. 4 members experienced that. The 5th, a quiet man named Rourke, the group's most experienced caver, remembered nothing after the first chamber. Not fragments, nothing. He would later sit down with his journal and try to reconstruct the trip from what others told him, and the result would read like a dream he'd been given secondhand. Present, but hollow. A story about someone who wore his face. Then the 6th. The 6th remembered everything. Her name was Clara. She was the youngest in the group at 26 and the least experienced. She should have been the most disoriented. Instead, she walked through the cave like she had been there before, touching specific walls, pausing at unmarked junctions, taking turns the group hadn't mapped. When Marcus asked how she knew which way to go, she said she didn't know. She just knew. Back on the surface, weeks later, she would describe tunnel formations in precise detail. Formations in sections the group had never reached. Sections that, according to every map of the cave, did not exist. When the group emerged from the cave entrance, Marcus checked his phone. No signal, but the internal clock still ran. He looked at the screen and felt the ground tilt beneath him. It was not morning. It was not noon. It was 4:17 in the afternoon of the following day. They had entered the cave at 11 a.m. the previous day. They had been underground for 29 hours and 17 minutes. And not one of them, not a single person in the group, had noticed. There was no fatigue, no awareness of the hours passing, no sense of night having fallen and a new day having risen. The cave had simply eaten the time and given them nothing back. Wait, it gets worse. Then Rourke said something that made Marcus go cold. He said, "I think we were in there for weeks." He wasn't disoriented. He wasn't confused. His voice was flat and certain, the way a person's voice gets when they're reporting a fact they know will not be believed. He said it once, and then he didn't say it again, and he would not discuss it when anyone pressed. When they finally reached the cars and drove back to town in silence, the 6 of them dispersed to their respective homes and lives. And then, gradually, they each began to fall apart. Dell stopped sleeping. Not insomnia. She'd had that before and knew what it felt like. This was different. This was a decision her body had made below the level of conscious thought, as if sleep had been reclassified as dangerous. She would lie in the dark with her eyes open for hours, not anxious, not afraid, just awake, waiting for something she couldn't name. One of the others, I won't use his name because he has a family and has asked to be left alone, began drawing. He was not an artist. He had never been an artist. But starting 2 weeks after the cave, he began filling notebooks with tunnel systems. Precise, architectural, detailed. Tunnels that spiraled in patterns that should be structurally impossible. Tunnels that seemed to lead somewhere. He didn't know where. He drew them anyway. He told his wife they came to him at the edge of sleep, fully formed, like something being transmitted. Rourke refused to enter dark rooms, any dark rooms. He would leave every light on in his house before moving between spaces. He installed motion sensor lights in the hallways, so there was never a moment of transition, never a second where he walked from light into dark. His wife thought it was a trauma response. His therapist called it a dissociative episode, still processing. Neither of them knew what he'd said standing outside the cave in the dark at 4 in the afternoon. I think we were in there for weeks. Clara, though. Clara was the one who remembered everything. remember? The one who navigated tunnels that weren't on the map. The one who knew which turns to take before the group had decided to take them. 3 months after the cave, Clara sent Marcus a message. She had been going back through her photos from the trip, the ones she'd taken in the first chamber before the strangeness started. And in one of them, in the background, just beyond the reach of her headlamp, where the dark crowded back in, there was a shape. She couldn't make out what it was, just a form, upright, still. Marcus told her it was a stalactite, a shadow, the way light plays underground. She said, "I know, but I've been trying to remember the walk from the entrance to the first chamber. The part I should remember because it was the first part, before anything got strange. And I can't find it. There's the entrance, and then there's the chamber. Nothing in between." She paused. And then, "But I remember everything after. I remember tunnels we never walked. I remember chambers we never reached. I remember going deeper than any of you knew. I remember being alone." Marcus has not replied to that message. He told me he read it 3 times, and then put his phone down and went outside and stood in the sunlight for a long time. Not because he thought Clara was lying, because he was trying to work out whether the thing she remembered, being alone in the deep tunnels, going somewhere the others hadn't, was something that had happened to her body or only to her mind. And he realized it didn't matter. Because either way, she had been somewhere she couldn't explain. Either the cave had taken her somewhere impossible, or her mind had taken her there instead. And which of those possibilities is actually more frightening? The brain is supposed to be the thing that makes sense of the world, the thing you retreat into when outside is too much, the thing you trust when everything else fails. What do you do when the retreat is the problem? What do you do when you can't trust the recorder? As for Bracken Cave, it's still there. The entrance still looks like it leads nowhere interesting. The tunnels are still unmapped past a certain depth. Researchers have studied the electromagnetic anomalies in the lower chambers. They've cataloged the way the acoustics distort sound into shapes that the human brain processes as voices. They've written careful academic papers about temporal disorientation in hypogeal environments and the psychology of sensory deprivation underground. None of them have gone past the second chamber. None of them have stayed overnight. Nobody has gone back. Not Rourke, not Dell, not the man who draws tunnels in his sleep, not Marcus. Clara has. She won't say what she found. There are things science can explain about what happened in that cave. The absence of natural light disrupts circadian rhythms. Confined spaces and low oxygen can cause mild hypoxia, which clouds memory, softens the edges of time, makes the brain unreliable in ways it doesn't announce. There are rational explanations for the watches, for the hunger disappearing, for the hours dissolving unnoticed. What science cannot explain is Clara. What science cannot explain is Rourke saying weeks with absolute certainty in the dark. What science cannot explain is the shape in the photograph, standing just beyond the light, in the section of cave that Clara cannot remember. Maybe they lost time. Maybe the cave took it. Maybe the brain, stripped of every cue it uses to anchor itself to reality, simply let go. Invented something to fill the gap, something that left marks. Or maybe the cave gave them something in exchange for what it took, and none of them are ready to admit what that something is. The loop stays open because the people inside it haven't closed it yet. Let us know in the comments which part of this story unsettles you the most. It genuinely helps us keep the lights on here at Mr. Wick and Whispers, and we read every single one. If this story got under your skin, hit the like button and make sure you're subscribed. There are more of these, darker ones, and you won't want to miss them. Sleep well, if you can.